Previous week's value area high is at 58.67 3/4 right here. Weekly pivot is at 58.26 1/4. And if we look at last week's volume profile here on the inside versus the 4-week rolling on the outside, what we're going to see is multiple distributions here. And on the 4-week rolling, we have a distribution here and then a large distribution of balance just below us. Therefore, 48s up to previous week's value area high, 58.67 3/4. I would expect if we're staying above the 48s, rotate through here. If we wind up finding an initiative look, build above this, leave an LVN around previous week's value area high, I want to see us push up and into 59.50 3/4 range up in here, 59.50s. However, holding inside a previous week's value area high, I want to see us test into the weekly pivot, pause, find a responsive bid up into the 48s for a B offer. To come across this zone, back into this large distribution, engage for continuation across this zone down the previous week's value area low, which is 57.84s. Okay, at which point we need to gauge for continuation or bid or so forth out of that naturally. Underneath the previous week's value area low, looking to test engage bid based upon last week's volume profile, this area here from 59 to 64 for potential LVN return from those lows. But if we give up 59 and start to push, then looking at 5700s with NQ right here inside of previous week's value. Clearly, we have a distribution right here. And so above previous week's value area high, I want to seek potential resistance at the 20,780s. Up in that range of the 1A, higher time frame. But if we cannot find interest inside, or we cannot maintain interest inside a previous week's value area high, but instead we build here and we start to push, or we look outside, build a node, and fail. Bring that sucker into weekly pivot of 20,342. Watch for a bid return to the 490s up here, just to rotate back across this node. Okay, so if we push down first, we're not outside of previous week's value area high. Watch this here around the 40s. For a push up into the 490s up here on top of the profile. If we do give up the weekly pivot, I want to see us push down into previous week's value area low, which is 20,196 range down here, to gauge for continuation or a pause and an exhaustive look on the intraday aspect for a push back up into the weekly pivot to test back and see, do we want into this distribution or not? And so testing back up into the high volume edge, if we find bid down here, we push up and fail from here, then I'd be targeting back across to the previous week's value area low into this range down here to the this untested weekly pivot, and would gauge bid around 20,000 even to 20,020 for a potential LVN return. But if we for an LVN return in that scenario, what I look for is an exhaustive look down here in 20,000s, 20,020 for a push back up into the previous week's value area low, rotate around and create a wide balance. But if we find ourselves offering underneath 20,000, then I want to seek reoffer going into 19,900s to then gauge for continuation. So that's from a high time frame aspect. That's what I'm looking at there. And hope everybody had a great weekend, productive weekend, and looking forward to this week.